Welcome to Vibe Sense. So today we're diving into a really big economic chess move, and it's coming from one of the world's fastest growing powers, India. You see, India is starting to push its currency, the rupee, onto the global stage. And trust me, this is about way more than just money. It's really a story about independence, about carving out your own path, in a world where all the old alliances are, well, shifting. All right, so to really get our heads around this big pivot, we've broken it down into a few key parts. First, we'll look at the sudden economic shock that basically lit the fuse. Then we'll see how India responded, and it was assertive. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how they're actually building this new rupee ecosystem. We'll weigh the good against the bad, the benefits versus the hurdles. And finally, we'll talk about why this is more of a strategic evolution, not some overnight revolution.
Okay, Section 1, a sudden economic shock. You know, every big strategic shift like this has a starting point, right? There's always a catalyst, that one moment that forces a country to completely rethink its game plan. And for India, that moment was, well, it was sharp, it was sudden, and it sent a very clear message from the other side of the world.
So let's pinpoint the exact moment this all kicked off. The date was August 27th, 2025. This is the day the United States hit Indian goods with some major tariffs, and it sent this absolute shockwave through the economy. And look, this wasn't just some minor trade dispute. This was the trigger. This was the event that forced India to take a hard look at how much it relied on the global financial system as it was.
And the scale of this shock, we're talking a massive 25% tariff. Just let that sink in for a second. This wasn't a small tweak, it was a huge economic blow. Now, the official reason given was India's ongoing purchase of Russian oil, which, went against U.S. sanctions. So this put India at a real crossroads. It had a critical choice to make, either bow to this external pressure or forge a completely new economic path.
So, faced with this incredible pressure, what did India do? Did it back down? Not at all. India chose not to be a passive player in this whole economic drama. Instead, it came back with a response that was clear, confident, and super assertive. It was a signal to the world that from now on, it was going to prioritize its own national interests, period. And honestly, this one quote from India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar just sums up the whole attitude perfectly. If you don't like it, don't buy it. I mean, how direct is that? It's totally unapologetic. The message couldn't be clearer. India's going to make its own calls based on what's best for India. This idea, this commitment to strategic autonomy, really became the philosophical backbone for all the economic policies that came next.
Okay, so a powerful statement is one thing, but talk is cheap, right? How do you actually back that up with real action? Well, this is where the country's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, you'll hear them called the RBI, stepped up to the plate. They're the ones who laid out the actual concrete plan to turn this idea of a stronger rupee into a reality.
And the RBI's game plan, it wasn't some ridiculously complex scheme. It was actually a really focused three-part strategy. Step 1. Just make it way easier for other countries to hold and trade in rupees. Simple. Step 2. Go out and actively find partners who are willing to trade directly with India in their own currencies. Bypassing the US dollar altogether. And step 3, start using the rupee to lend money in the region, which helps make it the go-to currency in its own backyard. Now, at the very heart of this whole strategy is a financial tool called a Special Rupee Vostro Account, or SRVA. Okay, I know it sounds super technical, but stick with me, because the idea is actually pretty simple. Just think of it like a special digital wallet. A bank in another country opens this wallet with an Indian bank, and it holds Indian rupees. So when a company from that country wants to buy stuff from India, they can just pay directly from this rupee wallet. No muss, no fuss. It completely cuts out that middle step of having to convert their money to US dollars and then back again, which, by the way, saves a lot of time and money. And hey, this isn't just a theory on some whiteboard in a government office. India is actively doing this right now with some really key partners. You've got big energy suppliers on the list, like Russia and the UAE, which is crucial. But just as important, you've also got a bunch of their neighbors in South Asia. It's a smart, two-pronged approach. Secure the resources you need from the big guys, while also making the rupee the essential currency for trade in your own neighborhood. All right, Section 4, benefits versus hurdles. Now, let's be real for a minute. A strategy this ambitious is never going to be a walk in the park. The potential upside for India is huge, for sure. But the road to making the rupee a truly international currency, it's definitely filled with some major hurdles. So let's take an honest look at both sides of the coin, the pros and the cons. Okay, so on the one hand, the benefits are pretty obvious. When you trade in your own currency, you're not at the mercy of wild swings in exchange rates. It makes business way more predictable. Plus, like we said, it cuts down on transaction costs. But the biggest win is probably enhanced economic sovereignty. It kind of insulates you from another country's economic policies or their sanctions. But, and this is a big but, on the other hand, the hurdles are no joke. This whole system only works if you can get a lot of other countries to actually agree to use the rupee. That's a tough sell. And you need a super robust, totally reliable financial system to handle all that extra traffic without any glitches. All right, our final section. Evolution, not revolution. It's really important we clear something up here because there's a common misconception. Whenever a country starts talking about using its own currency more for international trade, everyone immediately jumps to the conclusion that they're trying to take down the US dollar. But India's strategy is way, way more nuanced than that.
India's government has been really clear about this. The goal is not to replace the dollar. They've said de-dollarization is not the agenda. So this isn't some grand plan to dethrone the king. It's about creating options. It's about boosting the rupee's role, building a parallel system to be less dependent, and just having more flexibility in what is, let's face it, a really complex global economy. Think of it this way. They're not trying to throw out their old toolkit. They're just adding a new, very powerful tool to it.
And really, when you step back, India's strategy makes all of us think about a much bigger question. In a world where economic power is spreading out, where it's not all concentrated in one place anymore, are we slowly moving towards a future with multiple major currencies? You know, a world where the dollar, the euro, the yuan, and maybe even the rupee all kind of share the global stage? What India's doing right now, it might just be one of the first big signs of that new reality. Thanks for watching 5 Cents.